Imagine this. You're at a dinner table, the kind where everything looks perfect on the surface. Everyone's chuckling at recycled jokes, nodding in agreement with the same old opinions, playing the part like they've rehearsed this moment 1,000 times. Then, someone says something real, something sharp, honest, and piercing. Not rude, not loud, just clear. Suddenly the laughter dies, chairs shift, eyes drop to phones. The air thickens with silence, and nobody says it out loud, but you feel it. That moment didn't just interrupt the mood, it exposed something. You just saw what happens when someone thinks too deeply in a world that's afraid of depth. What you just felt, that tension. That's not new. That's ancient. That's what happens when society meets someone who sees what others don't want to see. And German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer knew this all too well. He saw it clearly 200 years ago, and everything he said then still applies now, maybe even more than before. See, intelligence doesn't make people uncomfortable just because it's smart. It makes them uncomfortable because it reflects something they try to avoid: the truth. A truth about themselves, about their lives, about the games they play and the masks they wear. Most people don't want to see that. They want comfort. They want illusion. And intelligent minds are like unwanted mirrors, not because they're judging, but because they can't help but reflect. Ask yourself, have you ever heard someone proudly say, "I love being around her because she challenges all my illusions and exposes when I'm being fake"? Probably not. People love validation, not exposure. Schopenhauer called this the world of appearances, a place where most people spend their entire lives. It's not fake in the way we usually think about lies, but it's designed to keep the truth distant and discomfort away. People build these cozy little bubbles, beliefs, routines, assumptions, and they live in them like homes. But intelligent people, they burst those bubbles without trying. They don't just go along. They notice when the room goes quiet. They sense what's not being said. They catch the cracks in the system. It's like watching a feel-good movie with friends and everyone's loving it, laughing, tearing up, enjoying the fantasy. But you see the plot holes, you hear the fake lines. You notice the scenes that don't make sense, the ones that ignore how messy real life is. You feel the disconnect. Do you stay quiet, or do you risk pointing it out and breaking the illusion for everyone else? This is what intelligent people go through every day. Not because they're cynical, not because they want to ruin the mood, but because their mind doesn't shut off. Their awareness doesn't take breaks. Schopenhauer described this as the burden of consciousness. The more clearly you see, the more alone you feel. It's like being the only sober person at a party where everyone else is a little drunk. You're watching people have fun, but you feel the chaos underneath, the absurdity, the noise, and sometimes it's too much. The truth is, when your mind is sharp enough to catch everything, you also catch what most people are trying to avoid. You're not too serious. You're just awake in a room full of sleepers. This awareness scares people, not because it's wrong, but because it might be right. What if the person who asks, "Why are we working jobs we hate just to buy things we don't need?" actually has a point? What if questioning the way society works isn't crazy, but overdue? See, society isn't built on truth, it's built on agreement. We agree that this printed paper is money. We agree that these invisible lines are borders. We agree that this ladder we call success is worth climbing. And when someone refuses to agree, when someone questions those rules, the system shakes. Because every person who thinks differently becomes a reminder that maybe we've all been following a script without reading it first. And that's why intelligent people get pushed aside. Not because they're mean, not because they're wrong, but because they remind others of the questions they don't want to ask. Schopenhauer understood that deeply. He said people don't actually want truth. They want validation. They want to be told they're right, they're good, they're on the right path. They don't want to be challenged. They don't want mirrors held up. They want applause, not introspection. And what's even more fascinating is this. Schopenhauer noticed that people react to intelligence the same way they react to physical danger. It's not logical, it's primal, it's instinctive. When someone questions your beliefs, it's like they're threatening your identity. And your body responds. Heart rate goes up, defenses rise. You feel like you're under attack, Not just your ideas, but your whole sense of self. Think about it. Have you ever had someone challenge a belief you've held for years? That sudden rush of heat in your chest? That feeling of wanting to argue, defend, retreat, or maybe even leave the room? That's the fight or flight response. That's not just debate, that's survival mode. So now imagine what it's like being the person who triggers that in people, just by speaking honestly. This is what many intelligent people face every day. Not because they want to argue, not because they enjoy stirring the pot, but because their minds naturally pull back the curtain. They question what everyone else accepts, and that makes people nervous. So, instead of dealing with their own discomfort, people turn the intelligent one into the problem. They say things like, "She overthinks everything," or "He just wants to sound smarter than everyone else." Sound familiar? That's not a fair judgment. That's a defense mechanism. It's how people protect themselves from feeling intellectually exposed. Schopenhauer didn't just write about this, he lived it. His most important work, The World is Will and Representation, barely sold when he was alive. The academic world ignored him. He wasn't invited to the conversations. He didn't fit into the happy stories people wanted to hear about free will, moral growth, or romantic ideals. Why? Because he told the uncomfortable truth. He said we're driven more by unconscious impulses than conscious decisions. He said what we call love is often biology pretending to be poetry. He said our lives are filled with illusions we invent just to make existence more bearable. No wonder people looked away. But, and this is important, Schopenhauer didn't speak these truths to sound superior. He wasn't trying to make people feel small. He spoke them because he believed truth, even painful truth, was better than living a lie. He knew beauty fades, comfort deceives, and reality, however tough, is the only solid ground we can stand on. That makes him rare, and it makes anyone who thinks like him today even rarer. Now, let's talk about the world we live in today. Everything Schopenhauer saw, everything he warned us about, has been multiplied by social media. Platforms that were supposed to connect us have become echo chambers where only the loudest and simplest voices are heard. The more nuance you try to add, the more you get pushed aside. If you ask questions, you're accused of being negative. If you see too much, you're labeled too deep or out of touch. And meanwhile, shallow content wins. Empty opinions trend. Groupthink becomes the standard. It's intellectual junk food. It satisfies nothing, but we keep consuming it because it's easy, because it doesn't challenge us. And when someone comes along and says, "Hey, this isn't healthy," they're not celebrated, they're silenced. Or worse, mocked. You see, society isn't just afraid of intelligence. It punishes it when it doesn't conform. But that punishment isn't always direct. It's not always insults or rejection. Sometimes it's quiet, a slow drift, a distance that grows every time you say something that doesn't fit the script. That's why intelligent people often feel isolated. Not because they want to be alone, but because meaningful connection takes more than surface-level talk. When your mind constantly questions, explores, analyzes, it's hard to find people who can meet you in that space. It's like speaking a rare language. You can have casual conversations with almost anyone, but those deep soul-level exchanges, they're rare. And when they don't happen, you start feeling like you have to perform a simpler version of yourself just to get along. And that performance, it's exhausting. It's not about being better, it's about being seen. And when people don't understand that, they call it arrogance. They say, "You think you're smarter than everyone." But it's not that. It's the ache of being misunderstood. It's the silence after you share something real and nobody knows how to respond. It's the constant self-editing, not to impress, but to avoid making others uncomfortable. That's not superiority, that's survival. And yet, even with all this misunderstanding, intelligent people keep showing up. They keep offering insight, they keep asking the questions, because somewhere deep down, they know what Schopenhauer knew. Growth comes from facing discomfort, not avoiding it. And the world doesn't change by people who say what everyone else is already saying. It changes because of those few who dare to think beyond it. But let's dig deeper into something we rarely talk about. Why being seen by an intelligent person can feel so threatening. It's not just about intellect, it's about exposure. Most people spend years building up a version of themselves they want the world to believe. They fine-tune it, they polish it. They manage impressions like professionals. But intelligent people, without even trying, can often see straight through that. They notice when words and actions don't line up. They catch contradictions. They see the tension behind the smile, the insecurity behind the bragging, and they don't always call it out. But the fact that they could makes people feel vulnerable. And when people feel seen in that raw, unfiltered way, it's terrifying. So they create space. They pull away. And then, just like that, the intelligent one becomes too intense or too serious or just not relatable. This is how the distance forms. Not from arrogance, not from superiority, but from discomfort. The discomfort of being seen too clearly, of having your inner world felt and understood without permission. And instead of acknowledging that discomfort, society builds walls. Labels are slapped on. Too much, too deep, too critical. It becomes easier to blame the mirror than face the reflection. Schopenhauer had a name for this kind of life: quiet desperation. That's how he described the average person's existence. Not loud, not dramatic, but quietly hollow, going through the motions, repeating the script, not because they're bad people, but because they never stopped to ask if the script made sense in the first place. They're chasing goals that were handed to them, not chosen, living lives that look full from the outside, but feel empty when the noise fades. Intelligent people disrupt that rhythm, not because they try to, but because they can't help but notice when the rhythm is out of tune. They're the ones who stop and ask, why are we doing this? Is this really making us happy? What if we're all following a story that was never true to begin with? And that's dangerous, not because it's wrong, but because it might be right. If it is, then what does that say about the systems we've built, the lives we've lived, the beliefs we've clung to? It's a scary thought. And that's why so many people push it away. It's easier to keep running than to stop and ask, am I even headed in the right direction? But here's what makes intelligent people so powerful. They're willing to stop, even if it means standing alone, even if it means losing the applause. They're not driven by popularity. They're driven by truth, by understanding, by something deeper than approval. And that's not stubbornness. That's courage. The kind of courage that says, I'd rather be real and misunderstood than fake and celebrated. But this courage is often misunderstood. It's seen as arrogance. Independence gets mistaken for rejection. Integrity is confused with judgment. And so, the cycle deepens. Intelligent people withdraw to protect themselves. Society reads the withdrawal as confirmation. See, they don't want to be part of us. Misunderstanding grows, and connection feels even further away. Still, intelligent people offer something society can't live without. They are the compass pointing north when everyone's spinning in circles. They're the quiet voice saying, this doesn't make sense, when everyone else is pretending it does. They're the reminder that we can think more deeply, choose more wisely, live more honestly. They ask the hard questions not to destroy, but to rebuild, not to judge, but to elevate. But society doesn't always see it that way, because comfort is easy, and change, real change, is hard. Schopenhauer knew this. He knew that people resist what they don't understand, that truth-tellers rarely get applause. But he also knew something even more important. Progress only happens when someone refuses to stay silent, when someone dares to say, look closer. That's how we grow. That's how we evolve. That's how we wake up. So, if you're someone who thinks differently, if your questions make rooms go quiet, if your insights make people uncomfortable, this message is for you. You're not broken. You're not too much. You're necessary. You don't have to dim your thoughts to be accepted. You don't have to trade your mind for belonging. There are people, maybe few but real, who will value your depth, who will meet you where you are, who won't be afraid of how much you see. They're looking for you, just like you're looking for them. Schopenhauer called consciousness both a burden and a gift, and he was right. The burden is the loneliness, the isolation, the awareness of things others would rather ignore. But the gift is profound. It's the ability to find beauty in complexity, to discover meaning where others only see chaos, to touch truths most people never even reach for. That's not something to hide. That's something to honor. You won't always be understood. That's part of it. But you can learn to stand in your truth with peace, to carry your questions with grace, and more importantly, to use your intelligence not as a shield, but as a bridge, Not to divide, but to connect. Not to escape, but to guide. Because the world doesn't just need thinkers. It needs thinkers who care, who listen, who speak with clarity, but also with compassion. And let's not forget, everything meaningful humanity has ever achieved, every breakthrough, every revolution, every step forward, began with someone who saw differently, who questioned what others accepted, who dared to think when everyone else was afraid. That's your legacy. That's your place in the story. So, don't shrink, don't apologize, and don't stop asking the questions. Your intelligence is not just a gift, it's a responsibility. Share it, use it. Be patient with those who aren't ready. But never stop being who you are, because someone, somewhere, is waiting to hear exactly what you see. And if this resonated with you, if you felt understood in ways you rarely do, then you're not alone. Hit that like button, share this with someone who needs to hear it, and comment the word unstoppable, so I know you stayed until the end. Supporting this channel isn't just about numbers, it's about spreading truth to those who've been waiting for it. If we keep adding value to your life, support the channel, and we'll keep bringing you what others are too afraid to say. Because this space, this message, isn't just a video, it's a mirror. And finally, you get to look into one that doesn't make you feel wrong for seeing the world as it is. You ready to stop apologizing for thinking too deeply? Then stay, because this is where people like you belong.